I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
Hello, I'm James Brown, and on behalf of the Eastern Church of Christ located in Toronto, Canada, I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Walking Through the Bible, a podcast where we seek to study the Bible and the Bible alone. Please stick around afterwards for information on how you can contact us. But for now, please go to the book of Matthew, and we'll turn you over to Jeremy Dieselkamp for our study of the day.
Thank you, James, and welcome to all of our viewers. This is the 24th lesson in our study of Matthew. Yesterday we studied Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 to 37, discussing how Jesus told his followers that they need to be truthful in all things. If you missed that episode, you can find it and all of our other podcasts on multiple platforms by going to one of the different sites listed on the bottom of the screen. Today we're going to begin with Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 and read through verse 48. The text that you'll see on the screen is from the New King James Version, but you're welcome to follow along with any version that you have. So let's now read Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 38. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. In this section of chapter 5, Jesus is correcting the people's view concerning the law of Moses and teaching them how their righteousness was to exceed the righteousness taught to them by the scribes and Pharisees if they wished to enter the kingdom of heaven. Even though Jesus is commenting on the old law, these teachings are applicable to us because these principles that Jesus is teaching are found in every law God has given man. So far, Jesus has talked about anger and murder, he's talked about lust, adultery, and divorce, and he has talked about being truthful. In today's reading, we have his final 2 corrections concerning vengeance and loving our neighbor. In verse 38, Jesus tells them that they had heard that the law says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The passages Jesus is referring to are found in Exodus 21:12-27 and Leviticus 24:20. What does an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth mean? Well, what was obviously being taught was that it meant that if someone did something to you, you could do the same thing back. We call this personal vengeance. But if you read the context of both Exodus 21 and Leviticus 24, you would find that God through Moses wasn't talking about personal vengeance. He was talking about justice that would be carried out by the people as a whole. See Exodus 21:22. God has never permitted individuals to retaliate. In the New Testament, Paul says in Romans 12:19, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. What was a follower of Jesus to do when someone wronged them? Suffer and endure it. If someone slaps us on the cheek, an insult, turn the other also, meaning endure, do not return insult for insult. If someone steals your tunic, inner clothing, give him your cloak, outer clothing. This is a higher degree of concession. And if someone is abusing you by compelling you to do things that is not required, going 1 mile, go with him 2. We're not even to hold so tight onto our money that we refuse to let someone borrow from us if they have wronged us. In all things, we're to do good. That does not mean that we can't go to the police or that we have to give in to what everyone says, but it does mean that we cannot seek retribution on our own, no matter what. All of this is leading up to Jesus' final point, which in essence can summarize everything Jesus has said so far, which is that Jesus' followers were to love their neighbor and their enemies. In other words, everyone. It's easy to love those who love us back. Even the tax collectors, a typically evil group of people in that day, practiced that. So why would Jesus' disciples be following a higher standard if they simply did what the tax collectors did? No, Jesus' teaching was harder. Love those who hate us. It's much easier to lose our temper with them and retaliate. Why must we love everyone? 2 reasons, really. First, we want to be sons of our Father in heaven, and second, because God loved them. He sends sunshine and rain on the just and on the unjust. If God can love those who hate him, then we need to be morally perfect or complete as God is and do the same. With that, our time is up for today. Please join us, Lord willing, tomorrow for the question and answer edition as well as the weekly sermon edition of this podcast. This week's question is the Lord's Supper the most important aspect of worship? Well, the sermon will be titled, The Lord is My Shepherd. We will continue our study of Matthew, the Lord willing, on Monday, beginning at Matthew 6, verse 1.
Thank you, Jeremy, and to our viewers, we also thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Should you have a question or comment, please leave it below or email it to answeringtheword@gmail.com. We'll try to respond to you as quickly as we can. We hope you will join us, Lord's willing, tomorrow for the question and answer edition as well as the weekly sermon edition of this podcast. Goodbye for now and have a great day.
I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor